Bismillah walhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So we have reached our fifth installation of this reflection on Surah Al-Mu'minun, and we discover that the Quran now is adding two other qualities that are the qualities of the believers. But before talking about those qualities, when it comes to the issue of the boundaries that the Quran is setting on sexuality, as we mentioned in the last installation, here the Quran is giving a warning. فَمَنْ ابْتِغَى وَرَاءَ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. That those who they fall outside of the parameters of what's considered allowable with regard to sexuality, they're considered to be transgressors. They're considered to be those who are going against the will of Allah. After that warning, the Quran now is reaffirming what was stated with regard to marriage, and also is adding another dimension, which is our social contracts, our economic contracts. Here the Quran is describing the believers as وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. Here is talking about those who they uphold that which is entrusted to them and their contracts and their covenants. And we can include in that, inshallah, the covenant of marriage and the responsibility of marriage. And so you see a number of ayat that are reaffirming the reality of the institution of marriage, and they come after the ayat that is talking about purification. And so that purity of the self is not going to be maintained unless we uphold our word. Our word should be that which keeps us committed to Allah and committed to each other. And so part of the commitment to the word is not only how we talk to our spouses and how we talk to each other as friends and as family, but also when we give the word to be committed in a marriage, and also when we give the word to be a person that upholds a trust or an economic contract. And so you begin to see that the Quran is giving us the values and the characteristics that uphold the society. So the believers are those who maintain those characteristics and cultivate those characteristics that were mentioned, and these characteristics are foundational. Also, what is mentioned is that the believers are those who they preserve their salah. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَاتِهِمْ وَصَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ. And sometimes there's qira'at. There's different ways of reciting the Quran, and sometimes you find it in the singular, and sometimes you find it in the plural. But in any event, what we see is an indication to uphold our trust, our covenants, our prayers. And then those who do that, they're described as being in a high station. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ. The Quran singles them out. Those people that are in a high station, they're the inheritors. Inheritors of what? الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسَ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And so those are the people who inherit al-Firdaus, which is a medial point close to the high point of Jannah. And the believers are described as being there without end. A state of perpetual goodness that's undescribable. It's only understood by way of Quranic descriptive because it's a matter of the unseen. And along with that is mentioned the creation of the human being and so on and so forth. And as is the tool of the Quran or the way of the Quran talks to us about what is seen, what is unseen, and then upholds it with what is seen. So we see the world, we know the human being, we know in our human interactions, really by nature, we know what's good and bad. We have a sense of right or wrong. It may not be 100% clear because it can only be clarified in totality. What is good, what is bad, can only be clarified in totality with revelation. But we have a sense by way of our nature, of our fitrah, of what is right and wrong. The same thing is to be said with regard to the creation. We have a sense that life has order to it, but it's the Quran, is revelation that comes and gives us more meaning to what that order is all about. And so when the Quran is pointing to the creation of the human being and the different stages and so on and so forth, the Quran is also wanting us to have this understanding that everything that was mentioned about the unseen is also part of the natural process of creation that we can see. But we have to believe, and part of that believing comes with believing in the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ as the messenger, as the human being who was in charge with giving us the teachings of the Quran. And so even with that, we go from a human being that can be seen, that can be proven to have existed, who lived among human beings, and then we find from that historical reality this idea that the Quran was given, and the Quran from there was transmitted from one generation after another generation until it reaches us. So we have this flow of the Quran in which we're always seeing that the matters of the unseen are integrated into the matters of creation that we can see, so that we see it as just one process. We see the unseen and the seen as all the creation of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And with that, we come to an end. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.